Morning guys. Nobody out there disputes that fob teas in high streets were a bad thing. It's quite accepted. They were a voracious machine, and it was never the intention of the 2005 Gambling Act to create mini casinos in every high street, was it? And no doubt gambling operators at that time did themselves absolutely no favours by denying the obvious. Of course, what's happened since that time, the people on social networking, in particular the UK Gambling Commission, the Daily Mail and the BBC and people like that, of a like mind, have turned their attack to a more general attack on operators and gambling. And I'd like to take a little bit of time to discuss that with you, and perhaps a little bit to fight back with a few facts of my own. I met on social networking where I engage on this subject quite robustly and on purpose with a lot of emotive arguments, for example suicides. Now nobody sensible or fair or caring wants to see anybody lose their lives for any reason whatsoever, but suicides are a fact of life these days. There are thousands in the UK every year. But according to the Office of National Statistics, since 2002, just one person a year has taken their life as a result of problem gambling or gambling addiction. One person. How do you feel about those arguments, the emotive arguments on suicide that is sometimes so casually bandied about on social networking? Do you feel that the argument is as compelling? Well, I certainly don't. Not that it's not important that we do everything we can as operators to behave in a responsible fashion. What about the 50,000 problem gambling children? Well, this farcical number came out as a result of a Gambling Commission conducted poll done by Mori Ipsos, the pollsters who so often get the numbers wrong in general elections. And they went out and they interviewed 2,000 to 3,000 children and doubtless asked them some loaded questions about their gambling activities as children. Were, for example, those children between the ages of 16, when you can buy a lottery ticket or a scratch card, and 18, when you're officially actually not a child? I don't know the answer to that question, but more importantly, what I do know is what actually came out of that, or what the Gambling Commission have said since that time, is that they accept that the underage gambling wasn't taking place with licensed operators, i.e. online licensed operators. That wasn't the problem. What was actually happening was peer-to-peer gambling. Children betting amongst themselves, or perhaps penny arcades at the seaside and stuff like that. That's really low-ball material, but yet we get from that a sort of general attack on gambling, which I think is unfair. Let me give you what I know to be the most compelling and accurate statistic. That's tens of millions of people in the UK gamble every year within their means and responsibly without any issue. That's a hard fact, isn't it? And that's one I believe that we should be fighting back with. Because when regulators want to apply a brush stroke to regulation and feel that we all ought to change our lives and operators need to amend how they do business with people, I always think of the banks, the UK banks. Can anybody out there say that the service from banks has become better over the last decade since regulators have been involved? Banks have routinely disappeared from our high streets. It's harder to speak to your bank, and you spend your entire time pushing buttons as more ill-trained staff attempt to deal with your problem. I mean, even if you were just to ring up a bank and say, where's my local branch? You're bound to be asked 5 questions as to your identity. The situation is ridiculous, and the reason why it's come about is because, quite simply, banks have become a lot less profitable as businesses since since the regulators became involved and applied broad brushstrokes to how they do business. So effectively, my view is, well, the regulators haven't done a good job, because the UK consumers have actually suffered at a far inferior level of service. So I've got to be honest with you, do I care if they did business with the Contras? Is that is it outrageous to say, well, really I don't, because what I want as a UK consumer is for the banks to deliver to me a fantastic service, and right now they're not doing that. And I fear that when we talk about gambling, that the plans for the UK Gambling Commission to make operators responsible for how people manage their lives merely devalues the product, the offering that gambling companies can make to their customers. Because now they're going to ask their customers to go through all sorts of new highfalutin procedures in order to gamble with them, to get their money out and such things like that. I don't believe these things are a positive, do you? I mean, at the end of the day, if the Gambling Commission was really earnest about controlling gambling levels in the United Kingdom, or managing them properly, they'd simply turn off Ray Winston from our screens. They'd stop Sky Sports reporters from, in every ad break, telling us that we need to have a bet on the in-play, wouldn't they? But they're not really that serious, are they, the Gambling Commission, about problem gambling levels when they refuse to tackle the marketing. What they want to do is they want to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. So what do they favour? Well, they want to make the operators fundamentally responsible for how their customers behave, and this is a dangerous departure from what used to be the norm, where the individual was responsible for managing his addiction. I mean, this is certainly true in alcohol and in tobacco, other addictive based products. An individual who, say for example, drinks too much will go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and forums and such like that in order to manage his own personal addiction. He doesn't expect Smirnoff vodka to pay the bill because he drinks too much and has spent too much on his alcohol and lost his job and things like that. You can't sue Smirnoff for that kind of thing. But yet the gambling companies seem to be getting particularly targeted for, in my view, unfair treatment. When you talk about making an operator responsible for how an individual behave, you also open them up to fraud. Say for example, an individual comes on to me and deposits £10, then 20, then 50, then 100, then 200, and in between that time he manages to back a winner or two and withdraws his money, then there's not going to be a problem. But what if, for example, he doesn't back a winner, and we are therefore responsible for managing that individual, how that individual behaves, or responsible for his actions? Could that individual therefore, who's potentially, in my view, a fraudster, could then turn around to me and say, oh well, my real stake is £10, £20, but I lost control and you didn't manage me losing control, you didn't intervene fast enough, and I ended up losing £300 or £400 to you, and you should have stopped me, give me my money back. So these are the kind of things that operators, the kind of problems that fraudsters will perpetrate on gambling companies as a result of grand plans by the UK Gambling Commission. Now, why should you care if the bottom line of some operators is affected by activities like that? Well, maybe you don't, but when you look at the UK banks, you, as an example, and my argument is that you don't see an improvement in the service that you are afforded by those companies. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about service. The final point to make is this. There are tens of millions of you out there, the silent majority, who do not have a problem with gambling, who love to have a bet. I see you at the racetracks, a lot of you betting with me regularly on the horse racing, and I can see how much you enjoy that experience of having a bet, how that makes that event for you have so much more meaning. Well, perhaps it's time for a few of you to speak out and say, on social networking, how much you enjoy having a flutter, and you don't need the regulator to tell you how to run your lives, and certainly not me run your lives and ring you up and say, are you sure you want to deposit this £50 with me? I wouldn't like that, would you? Well, if you do gamble responsibly and within your means, there's only one place to come, and that is Jeff Banks Online, because we are the operator, the traditional operator, with all the technology, and we're going to look after you. So my responsible gambling message, I've given that, and now this is my sales pitch. Do join Jeff Banks Online, because we are the best operator out there. Thank you for your time in watching this video this morning. I hope you've understand some of these points, and I look forward to your comments on social networking. And don't forget to follow this Facebook page for more interesting videos. Well, I hope you find this interesting videos in the future on a range of topics related to gambling. All the best, guys.